Most of the people who know Chinese history have heard the story of the cup of wine. Song Emperor Zhao Kuangyin settled the problem of his powerful generals with a single dinner. No killing, no bloodshed. Everyone walked away satisfied. But there was another founding emperor in Chinese history who faced the exact same problem and took a completely different path. His name was Zhu Yuanzhang, Zhu Yuanzhang. He launched a massive purge. Tens of thousands of people were caught up in it. Even his own relatives by marriage were not spared. History remembers Zhao Kuangyin as generous and humane. History remembers Zhu Yuanzhang as brutal and ruthless. But if we stop there, we miss the question that's actually worth asking. Both of these men faced the same fundamental problem. How do you completely remove the threat that powerful military generals pose to imperial power? Their answers were different, not because their personalities were different, but because the situations they faced were fundamentally different. Let's start with Zhao Kuangyin. His generals were professional soldiers. Their power came from one source: the military positions the emperor had given them. Without that military command, they had no way to build an independent political base. That was Zhao Kuangyin's biggest advantage. These men's interests could be substituted, give them enough land, wealth, and honor, and they would hand over their armies. They had reason to accept, because life, after giving up command, would still be very good. And crucially, these generals hadn't yet formed the kind of massive family networks and political factions that would later define Ming dynasty power groups. They were a group of generals, not a unified bloc. So the problem Zhao Kuangyin faced was essentially get the generals to put down their weapons. There was still room to maneuver. One dinner plus the right compensation, and it was done. Zhu Yuanzhang's situation was something else entirely. Most of his generals were old friends from Huaixi, men he had grown up with. After decades of fighting to build the dynasty together, these men had already formed a deeply entangled interest group, known historically as the Huaixi elites. They intermarried. They supported each other. They protected each other. They weren't just generals. They had their own networks of proteges, family connections, and regional influence. This group's roots had grown so deep that no amount of compensation could pull them out. Give them more land? They already had plenty. Ask them to give up military command? They still had regional power. Tell them to step back from politics? Their people were still inside the court. This wasn't a few generals. This was a web. So the problem Zhu Yuanzhang faced was no longer just getting generals to put down their weapons. It was, what do you do with a political faction that has already fully taken shape? And there was one more problem Zhao Kuangyin never had. Zhu Yuanzhang's chosen successor was his grandson, Zhu Yongwen, Zhu Yuanwen, young, inexperienced, no military background. Zhu Yuanzhang knew perfectly well that once he was gone, his grandson would never be able to hold his own against those old veterans. But what he feared wasn't just an immediate rebellion. He had watched the Yuan dynasty collapse with his own eyes, seen how military strongmen would sideline an emperor step by step, until the imperial throne was just an empty shell. What he was truly afraid of was his descendants becoming puppets in the hands of powerful officials decades down the line. He wasn't just trying to protect Zhu Yongwen, he was trying to build a structure that would protect the imperial family for generations. Of course, that doesn't mean Zhu Yuanzhang had no personal suspicion or desire for control. It suggests that if we only explain his choices with the word brutal, we'll never really understand how he got to this point. In his eyes, this was the last option left. Looking at these two situations side by side, something becomes clear. Zhao Kuangyin and his generals had always been in a top-down relationship. He was the commander. They were his officers, command and obedience. That was the logic underneath everything. Their status depended entirely on the authority Zhao Kuangyin had given them. So he had a natural control. He could redefine the rules. They could only accept. Zhu Yuanzhang's relationship with his generals was completely different. His men weren't just subordinates. They were the founding members of the dynasty, more like people who had built something from nothing together, not simply people who followed orders. That kind of relationship is built on shared experience and mutual dependence. In that kind of relationship, nobody naturally has the power to unilaterally rewrite the rules because the other side has a say too. That was Zhu Yuanzhang's real problem. He wasn't just their superior. He was the person who built this dynasty with them. Zhao Kuangyin could use substitution to solve his problem because he was always the one who made the rules. Zhu Yuanzhang couldn't use that method because these people were never just his subordinates. Founding members don't part ways easily, especially those founding members have built up their own networks, influence, and deep regional roots. So it wasn't that Zhu Yuanzhang didn't want to use Zhao Kuangyin's approach. He simply couldn't. His board had no room left to maneuver. But here is what history finds most interesting. Both methods came with a cost. Zhao Kuangyin's approach cost him military strength steadily over time. Generals rotated constantly. Soldiers didn't know their commanders. Commanders didn't know their soldiers. The Song dynasty never managed to build a truly effective military again and eventually collapsed under foreign invasion. Zhu Yuanzhang's approach: he eliminated the external threat from his generals, but he didn't eliminate the threat from inside the imperial family. Not long after he died, his grandson Zhu Yunwen was overthrown by his own uncle Zhu Di. The purge had already happened, and in the end, it still didn't save his grandson's throne. That's the irony of history. You think you've removed every danger, and then the danger comes from exactly where you weren't watching. Zhao Kuangyin and Zhu Yuanzhang both found their own way to solve the same problem. One used substitution, one used elimination. One left behind a reputation for being generous. One left behind a reputation for being brutal. But if you put them back in each other's situations, you start to see something. In Zhao Kuangyin's position, Zhu Yuanzhang might have chosen that dinner too. In Zhu Yuanzhang's position, Zhao Kuangyin might have done the same thing. History is never just a moral story. What truly determines how a person makes a choice is never their personality. It's the nature of the relationship between them and the people around them. A top-down chain of command, or founding members who build something together. That one difference determines how much room a ruler has to work with. Enough room, and you can use intelligence. No room left, and all that remains is force.